This is Teen Quest Live, where we create online conversations about youth culture, parenting, and issues facing youth workers in today's world. Our host, Mark Witt, has served as a pastor and youth pastor in multiple churches, and he's the founder and director of Teen Quest, a youth ministry that creates peak experiences for youth groups and teenagers through camping, events, missions, and evangelism. Welcome to Teen Quest Live.
Hi, this is Mark Witt from Teen Quest. Hey, most churches around America have youth groups. Some are small and some are large. Some youth groups are actually growing and other groups are just staying the same. Well, in the course of a year, I have the opportunity to minister to hundreds of youth leaders from all over the Eastern Seaboard. And some have a hard time keeping their youth groups going, and others are growing crazy. Well, my guests today are from the greater Cleveland area. Three youth pastors with me today. Gerard Patton from 58th Street Church of God, Dean Morris from the Church of the Rise, and Max Perez, House of Praise International. And we're glad to have you guys with us today.
I'm glad to be
Dean,
here.
To be here.
You were with me this winter at Snow Camp as our speaker, one of our favorite speakers. We enjoyed you up there.
It was a lot of fun. It was great to be with you guys.
I'm sure glad the snow is gone and summer's on its way, right?
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys, let me start with Max. Max, you've been in youth ministry for how long?
I've been in youth ministry for almost 10 years.
Okay, so you've been around a while. You're way beyond the average. I mean, man, you're like a senior citizen youth leader being there 10 years. And I'm kind of a simple guy, and I want you to explain to me. We're going to talk about today what a youth group is, or building a youth group. Tell me in your own word, what is a youth group?
Well, a youth group is just simply a group of kids that come together and hang out and learn about Jesus. Every church has families, and most ministry is directed towards the adults because they're the tithers. And sometimes kids kind of get left out. I grew up where it's just you just sit with your mom and dad in church. Youth group specializes in ministering the gospel just to teenagers and young people in a way that they can relate to and connect to. So I would say that's what a youth group is. It's just kids, all ages, different ranges, just coming together learning about Jesus.
Dean, what is not a youth group? I mean, we're talking about a youth group being a group of students getting together. What would not be a youth group?
You know what, honestly, being able to define what a youth group is so fluid depending on where church you go to. But what a youth group is people that are meeting without a common purpose. For us, a youth ministry is all about one common purpose. And if you don't have a group of people really running after the same thing, really pursuing the things of Jesus, then that's what I would constitute as being not a youth group.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dean, how long have you been in youth ministry?
I've been in youth ministry now for almost 7 years, and loving each and every single minute of it.
All right, now we have another guest. Gerard, good having you on the show today. And how long have you been in youth ministry?
Thank you. It's good to be here. I've been in youth ministry as well for 7 years now, so I guess you have three veterans.
All right. Now you guys come from different kind of church locations. Like Gerard, I understand your church is inner city, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Or at least
we're very inner
close to
city.
inner city.
Yes,
and Dean,
very inner
we're out in
city.
the. Okay.
We're extremely suburban, very affluent area.
All right. And Max, what about you? Okay. Is there a difference between inner city youth ministry and suburban youth ministry? Can you define, Max, a difference? Is there a difference, or do you do it all the same?
I found every student needs love, and they say, you got to minister to the hip-hop kids a certain way and the suburban kids a certain way, and I found that to just love them, and I don't really see a big, vast difference. sometimes using examples and stuff like that, and your sermons might change. But other than that, I think the universal language that they need is love. So I've seen it in a suburban setting and in an urban setting, in an inner city setting as well.
Dean, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that too. Before I came out to the suburbs, I was actually a youth pastor down on West 25th Street, which is right in the heart of the inner city of Cleveland. And the approach, especially to get Jesus into these young people and to grow the youth ministry, to me, I found it to be exactly the same. And I agree with Max. It's all about creating a culture of love. And when you have that culture, young people gravitate towards that.
Either one of you guys find it sometimes that you feel like the church thinks that your job is to babysit the kids while the real ministry goes on in the church with the adults? Do you ever feel that way, ever? Gerard?
Not necessarily in this church, because of prior to me coming, they were a year without the youth pastor, so they realized the dynamic of it and how much it was a need. But I can understand, because in other settings that I've been in, it's kind of been, that stigma has been, we'll drop them off on their Saturday or on their Wednesday, whenever their service is, and then we'll pick them up whenever, the service is over. And it's really more or less, like you said, a babysitter's club in a sense. But here in this location, that's not been the case, because they realize the need of youth pastors and youth ministry here.
Max, how important is to your church? I mean, I know it's important to you, but how important is it to your church?
I'm blessed with a senior pastor who was a youth pastor. And so it's a huge deal. Youth ministry is a huge deal. One of our core values in our church is generations. And we believe in ministering to all generations. So it's a priority. Whenever I want to do something special on a Sunday, I can ask Pastor. He'll say yes. Or on a Friday night, or do anything where we are showing the youth and allowing the youth to kind of take over. Man, our church loves that. It's wonderful.
Dean, you said you were in youth ministry 7 years, and those 7 years, they say you can't, I've been told, you can't even really have an effective youth ministry till you're there at least 6 or 7 years. I mean, you can't even get started, do it right till you're there 6 or 7 years. Are you seeing now things that are beginning to take hold that you've been there that long?
You know what? I actually haven't been at this church for 6 or 7 years. I've been at this church for 3. I've only been the youth pastor at this church. Like the official youth pastor, I was the assistant youth pastor, helping out with other youth ministries, but the full-time youth pastor here since July. And I don't think that you have to be in a place 6 or 7 years, because we've seen our youth group, and not to bring up numbers, but just to show the truth behind the matters, we've gone from 40 kids to roughly 110, 120 on a weekly average since July.
Whoa.
And that's
40 to over 100 since July?
Absolutely. And so to be there 6 or 7 years to see an impact, I think is a fallacy. If you
6 or 7 years, you'll have 2,000.
I hope so. That'd be awesome.
Now, what are you doing? I mean, come on, you've got to have some kind of secret to go from 40 to 100 and whatever you said in what, 8 months?
Yeah, there's a couple things. There's a couple things that we do that we really value, and of course, one of them is everybody on the youth leadership team. Because sometimes youth ministry, you can have this diversity and division between the main church and the youth ministry, and we won't allow anybody on our team unless they're supporting the senior pastor and running with his vision. In addition to that, we've really just embraced culture and embraced creativity more than anything else. We do a lot of things that people would consider very edgy. For example, this coming week we're going into a sermon series called What Would Jesus Say To? And we're looking at what would Jesus would say to LeBron James, Kim Kardashian, Machine Gun Kelly, who's a big-time rapper in Cleveland. So we really go out on the edge and do those kind of things. But then in addition to that, we always put practical use to the faith. For example, every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, we're in the inner city serving the hungry, serving the needy. But then another thing that we've adopted is that slogan, we begin service in the middle of service, and we always end service with the phrase, make Jesus famous. And that has been so ingrained into teenagers, and what we've done, and we've almost branded that wherever they go, people know what church they're from because they use the term make Jesus famous. and it's just been a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm from the teenagers, and they're really the ones that have started growing it. We just provide the creative outlet on the Wednesday night, and they're the ones that are in the schools really just being evangelistic in their approach.
Wow. Gerard, what about you? Your youth group, is it a growing youth group? Are you seeing this kind of impact, this kind of a percentage of growth?
Not the same as Dean. I think Dean's the exception to the rule. I love it. I love to see that type of growth here at our church. What I've been building and what I've been doing is building leaders. The leaders that we've had, as Dean has said, has been an important role of what happens in your group. Because just like when Jesus was here, he had 12 disciples, and those 12 disciples from Asia at the time. So if we get that same sort of idea, and that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to ingrain in the leaders just the heart of, like he said, the pastor, and the heart of the ministry, so that it grows and so that it has that same effect. Right now, like when I've only been here for 8 months as well now. Me and Dean actually started in our places around the same time. And what we have now is I'm doing a restructuring of all the leaders that we have. Because we've had some that were kind of hanging around, that were helping out the ministry while they did not have a youth pastor, and they were just staying in there and loving on the kids, which says multitudes. But then in that process, they kind of gotten busy and had a lot going on in their lives and such. So now we're restructuring the leaders that are in there so that we can have that same type of effect. So 8 kids in the youth group, and right now we have an average of about 30 or 40 right around there. So.
Whoa, that's a pretty good impact. 8 to 30 or 40.
Yeah.
Now, Max,
yeah.
What about you? Are you seeing this kind of growth as well?
Yes. When my wife and I took over the youth ministry, or the torch got passed because we grew up in that ministry. We took the ministry from 30 to about 150 on a regular basis.
Whoa!
And,
Whoa!
It's cool. It's cool. One of the core things that we do. Really where we've seen the shift and the change is we implemented our DNA is the friendliest place around. And I've learned that you can have lights, and you can have a rapper, you can have a dynamic preaching and drama, but if you fail in friendliness, you fail. Because a student can come in and be touched by Jesus but never make a friend. And I've seen we've put different things to where we actually are focused on that. We have people called connectors that their job is to walk around and look for people who are standing by themselves, who are kind of just sitting around, and they just go and engage them. And I've really seen that as the heart behind this, because there was a quote that I heard many years ago. It said, friendliness is the road that the Holy Spirit often travels on. And so we really adopted that and made that kind of our mantra at our youth ministry, and we've seen a dynamic change. There's no cliques. There's no like this group versus this group. We've eliminated that and just allowed friendship to be the big deal in the youth ministry.
Now, I am elated that I'm seeing this tremendous growth you guys have, but I cannot sit here and believe by you just being a friendly youth group, because there's a lot of youth leaders maybe listening right now or watching right now. They're saying, I have a friendly youth group, and I didn't go from 8 to 140 overnight. I have an active youth group, but we haven't gone from 8 to 4. There's got to be something you guys are doing that you're not telling us right now that you're building this youth. Dean, tell me there's some secret you're not telling me.
Well, our secret really is we embrace the creativity side and culture so much. And the one thing is we believe that just as there was the culture of the time, that's why Jesus told parables, that we do the same thing. We embrace culture where it's at. We meet the kids where they're at. We provide an atmosphere that's, like Max said, friendly, loving. Without that culture, without that atmosphere. And what we've seen is, as we've embraced the creativity, and what I mean by that is from the very beginning to the very end of a youth service, it doesn't look like church, it doesn't feel like church, you wouldn't even know that you're in a church. And when we've gone and we've embraced that creative side. What I mean by creativity is very rarely will you ever see just a regular message. What you'll see is we'll kill lights, bring spotlights on, use music. We embrace all the senses. We really just try to break it down and create an atmosphere that's conducive to a teenager to really just accept all that Jesus is. And one thing that we found is we switch up what we're doing every 7 minutes. We won't do anything for more than 7 minutes because really this is an ADD generation. And that's how we're able to keep the attention of the teenagers, and they become so excited of what's going on that they go into the schools. And just a couple weeks ago, they were all going crazy, and I even got a phone call from a principal that said, "Is it true that you actually preached out of a tent?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I preached out of a tent. It was awesome." And we just had teenagers go, and you wouldn't believe what happened to youth ministry. You should see the game that we did. I can't believe that they took that McDonald's cheeseburger and put it in a blender, and the kid, drank that thing, and then he got sick all over the place. And we create the moments for them to talk about, because really the number one way to grow a youth ministry, I believe, at least promotion-wise, is not Facebook, not radio, not TV. It's really word of mouth, and it's really a teenager reaching out to their own sphere of influence to see the growth.
Mm-hmm. Now, Gerard, what are teenagers looking for? I mean, you've got kids that are coming to your youth group, and Dean's and Max's youth group. What are they looking for? What are these kids looking for? Why? I mean, they're obviously looking for something, and these guys, all three of you guys, are meeting that need. Maybe you already answered it, but from your perspective, what are they looking for?
A lot of times I feel like they're looking for two things: a place to be real, and then a place to feel a part of.
Yeah.
When you have, just like it's just like every adult, just like a Sunday service, people feel a part of it when they can take ownership. Mm-hmm. And so what we try to provide with the young people is a place for them to take ownership and to feel a part of, them to be able to give back, because the moment that they give is the moment that they take ownership, and the moment they take ownership is the moment that they tell another friend. Say a kid comes in and they say, "Hey, I'm playing on the worship team." They're really excited about that. So we try to promote and we teach and mentor students at the age that they're in now so that they can be able to reach. And the stigma is, as kids, I remember growing up in a youth group and saying, when I turn 35, I'm going to really worship and serve the Lord effectively. And as a child, as a young person, instilling in them that this is their church, they can serve and be members now, as opposed to 35, and getting them to realize that it's their job now to bring heaven to earth, in the sense of they can be able to minister wherever they are at this age. That's been kind of our motto, and the stigma has been just getting them to realize that. And the moment that light bulb goes off in their life, they've been able to just tell friends about it and be able to say, "Hey, I'm proud of this. Come and check us out. Hey, I'm doing a little drama, I'm doing a little skit," whatever the case may be, but just allowing them to get ownership of something and to feel a part.
Max, do you go out and visit kids and invite them in, or do they just come? You just open the doors and they all come?
I do a fired up. I think what Dean said was great. There's nothing's better than marketing than a student that's on fire for Jesus, someone that's really excited.
So you get the kids to bring kids?
Yes, kids to bring kids. I really don't go out to a lot of their games. We have small groups in our youth ministry, so I minister, honestly, though we have that many students coming, I focus personally on about 10 guys, and I make sure I'm at their games and at their...
So you have 10 kids you focus on, and those kids bring their friends, and that's how you grow their youth group. That's one thing that you do. Dean, is that the same thing that happens to you? Do you actually focus on certain key kids and get them to mobilize the rest of the group, or do you go out and get them in yourself?
We do. I mean, it's virtually impossible for one person to minister to 100 different kids, because even Jesus just picked 12, and he poured his life into 12, and then they went on and did the rest. And that's really what we do. Is I have personally right now 8 guys, and then my other youth leaders that I've trained up that really that they could actually run the ministry if they needed to. So I have about 4 or 5 guys and girls that are really solid. They each have a couple, and we just pour our lives into those kids, and that's really the ones that we see making the huge impact. Then when they get to a certain point, then they start to raise kids up. So it's like this whole discipleship effect that we start with a few, and then once they're discipled up, or once they start to take part in ministry, they start to disciple others, and we move on and disciple others. So you get this trickle-down effect. You start with a few, and then before you know it, you have this huge web of teenagers that are really just on fire for Jesus.
All right, so if you're speaking to a youth leader right now that maybe they're struggling, they have a small group, maybe they just got there, and they're trying to figure out how is Max and Dean and Gerard building this thing. You're saying to focus on some key kids, pour your heart into them, like Jesus did with his disciples, and then begin to minister to them, start growing, because they're going to bring their friends, they're going to believe in what you're doing, and they're going to get involved. Would you say in a nutshell that would be your secret?
I would say that as well, and I would also say the youth pastor, youth leader have to care more than anyone else about, if you're in a small room, if you're in a basement, if you're in, you have to clean it, you have to set the chairs up, you have to care more about what they're coming to in your service than anyone else, because they'll come and they'll check it out, and if it's not relevant, and if it's not clean, or if it's not friendly, they'll leave and never come back. And that's the worst kind of marketing you can have.
I want to turn a corner for a moment. The statistics say that 70% of students are leaving the church when they graduate from high school, and they don't return. They're gone. They don't even come back. It used to be kids would get, or they would get married and have children, then would start coming back to church. They're saying now that these 70% are not coming back, period. This is it. Well, if this continues, in 30 years, we won't have a church as we know it today, and we're going to have churches that are going to be museums. What can you say, guys, to a youth leader who says, I want to not only grow a youth group, but I want to keep it strong, I want to keep it effective, I want to keep it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, strong? What can you say, Dean?
I think it comes back to the discipleship thing. If you're really pouring your heart into a teenager, there's a difference in them coming to church for a show or coming to church because there's lights or friends. Really, in order for it to stick for a lifetime, they have to get the Word of God inside of them. For that to happen, we found the best ways to really develop habits through discipleship that these kids can take with them. Because by the time they leave, if you have a teenager that reads his Bible, he's memorizing Bible verses, he's financially responsible, whether it's tithes or offerings, he understands stewardship, he understands serving, he's not going to walk away. And that's something we've seen, and I've seen over 7 years. The church I was with before, we saw teenagers go to college, come back, and during the summer, and it even happens here, they're serving in the church because we develop habits along the way. And I think it goes back to really picking out some key leaders, pouring your life into them so that they can pour their lives into others. And then if we do that, we'll start to see the 75% turn around in our favor.
Gerard, how can we add to this? How can we keep the kids coming for the next generation? How can we get them morphed into the church and being a part of the church even as adults when they get out of high school? Because really, that's the real true test of a successful youth ministry, is the lasting effect. It's easy. It's not easy, but it may be easier to keep them for a while, but to really keep them involved in the church and be a part of the church as adults is a bigger task. What do you think, George?
Yes, sir. I feel like the goal of ministry in general is connecting people not to rituals but to the heart of Jesus. If we can connect people to the heart of Jesus, that I feel like that in and of itself will be the keeper. I remember growing up, and the people I grew up in church, and there was a group of about 15 of us. Well, the remainder of those people that are in the church still is about 3 or 4. And I looked at that, and I used to cry and pray and talk to God, like, God, why am I the exception to the rule? And I found out that throughout all of these things that we used to do, lock-ins and Bible studies and camps and things like that, somehow throughout all of that stuff, I ran into the heart of Jesus and fell in love with his heart. And in that exchange, throughout everything that went on in my life, even when I stepped away from the church period after high school, even throughout all of that, there was still a thread of the tie of the heart of Jesus to mine. And throughout all of that, it brought me back because I knew the heart as opposed to just rituals and just doing things and just going to church and just whatever. I connected to the heart of God. And I feel like if we during services and during these times that we have with these young people, is that one, if we show them Jesus, and two, connect them to his heart as opposed to any programs or anything that we do, that there will be a return. There will always be a return, because we understand that Jesus is the ultimate wooer. You know, the Holy Spirit is the ultimate wooer and connector to every heart that we have. So if we do that, I feel like the ratio of return will be, exponential as in comparison to what we have now.
Awesome. And we're out of time almost. I have another question to ask you guys, and that is this. If there may be a youth leader listening right now who's discouraged. They've been in youth ministry for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and nothing seems to be happening. Things seem to be like status quo. They're having trouble with the church, maybe politics. I don't know what it is. They may be having trouble with the kids or maybe the parents, and they're just discouraged. What can you do to encourage them, Max? What can you do to get them on the right track? What can you say to them?
I would say, if to the youth leader that's listening who is discouraged, I've been there. I've been through politics. I've been through students you pour your life into and they just fall away from the things of God, and that those that are close to you have been through pain. And I would say this: everything is predicated on your relationship with Jesus. If you stay connected and stay devoted to Jesus, cut everything else out. Simplify it to your life. I found personally that when life gets complicated and I'm wounded and that I need to simplify some things. And so I would say to you, just simply get rid of every other distraction in your mind and just connect to back why you do what you're doing. Remember that you're called by God. You were chosen by God to be exactly where you're at. And so sometimes opposition will come. That's why you got to hold on to Jesus even closer in your devotional life. And you'll get through this. You'll get through this, and you'll grow through this through Jesus and connect to Jesus. Your youth ministry will benefit from it because you'll be speaking from a well of experience and love, and instead of like using someone else's illustrations, So I would just say to you, man, stay on track. Get some people around you that can encourage you. Find some youth pastors that have been ahead of the game a little longer than you, and let them pour into you, or listen to this podcast over and over again.
Gerard, can you add to that at all?
Yes, sir, I can add to that. I feel the same exact way. Get a hold of some people that can speak into your life, that speaks volumes. One of the things that has always helped me is I've had somebody that has been mentoring me at all times, and I've had somebody that I can just speak to in the same level that I can bounce stuff off of, and I've had someone that I can mentor. Those three things have always kept me in check in my life, and I made sure that I always had those three things going when I'm in ministry, so that when I'm going through something hard, I can talk to somebody about it, and they can deposit in my life. And then when I'm going through something hard, I can just talk to someone on the same level. And then when I'm going through something hard, I can keep my standards always up because I'm pouring into someone else. Those three things have just been a great thing that have been going on in my life. But just hang in there. Don't give up, because like Max said, God's placed you here, and he's put you here. He's smarter than we are, and he knows what's going to come out of us during these times. These are the times that are going to make you, and you're going to look back at this moment and say, I knew that God can bring me through this, and I knew that he'll bring me through the very next one as well.
Dean, do you want to wrap us up with any comments you have concerning what we're talking about, building a youth group or discouragement?
Absolutely. As far as just a youth leader, a youth pastor, I've been there. I've had my resignation letter written. signed and ready to turn in before. And
I've done it many times, guys. I've done it many times, even in my own ministry.
Exactly, and just kept pushing through, and just kept staying close to the heart of God. Whenever you feel drained, just know that Jesus is always there with you. I agree with what these other guys said. Get a network of people. Find a youth pastor that's been around a little bit longer. I have a youth pastor that I connect with. His name is Steve McKnight. He's been in youth ministry for 30 years now, has the biggest youth group in Cleveland, and I stay close to him because I know if there's ever something that comes up, and a lot of times if we're truthful, that the thing that we're going through seems like the biggest thing in the world at the time. Right. And really, when you get through it, you realize God was with you the whole way, and it's really God is pushing you through because He's preparing you for something greater. Right. Don't let go of your destiny thing going on, because God has a huge, great destiny for you, and He's just using these times to really define your destiny and to prepare you for where He wants to take you. So that's what I would say to the youth pastor, youth leader that is in that predicament.
We're listening to Dean Morris, Church on the Rise, Max Perez, House of Praise International, Gerard Patton, 58th Street Church of God. Great guys out in the battlefield, working with the kids, seeing a change, growing like crazy. Guys, if you're listening to us right now, anyone listening right now, in 5 years, these guys are going to be giants. I mean, they're going to be like, people are going to be clamoring to see what are they doing. These things are exploding. Keep up the good work, guys. Thanks so much for coming on today, Teen Quest Live, and we appreciate you sharing with us.
Thanks.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on Teen Quest Live with Mark Witt. You know, the discussion is just starting. You can visit our website and leave your comments and thoughts about this topic. Find us online at teenquest.org. That's teenquest.org. And we'll see you next time on Teen Quest Live.